What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres. We have a breaking news edition of the Ducks Dish podcast as Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks have struck once again on the recruiting trail. This time it is four-star safety Tyler Turner out of Brennan High School in San Antonio, Texas. He was just on a visit to Oregon. He was actually out in Eugene for his official visit over the weekend, and then decided to make the call and become the latest member of Oregon's 2023 recruiting class. So what I kind of want to do is break down this recruitment for the Ducks and talk about my thoughts on what it means for Oregon, with some of their guys that they already have in the class, some of the guys that are currently on the roster, and really what it means for Oregon moving forward as the Ducks continue to pick up momentum ahead of a massive recruiting weekend to close out the month of June coming up this weekend. Tons of big guys expected on campus to take their officials, unofficials, just a huge weekend all around for Oregon on the recruiting trail. So let's rewind the clock a little bit for this commitment and kind of talk about how Oregon got in the picture and ultimately got the job done. I think one of the biggest notables for this commitment is that Tyler Turner was down to a final two of Oregon and Oklahoma. So Tyler Turner did pick the Ducks over the Oklahoma Sooners, who are, of course, headed by new head coach Brent Venables, who was the former defensive coordinator at Clemson. But it's an exciting time to be a Duck, as Alex Rodriguez is saying in the comments there. Thanks for stopping by. We are live right now on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres. So if you guys are here live, let me know what you think of this latest commitment and how Oregon's doing on the recruiting trail in the class of 2023. If you guys are watching on YouTube, appreciate you guys stopping by. Do the same thing in the comments. Let me know about what you think on this commitment and who you want Oregon to go after next and who you want to commit next to this 2023 class, because there's plenty of big time targets that Oregon is in on. So with all that being said, like I said, let's get back to rewinding the clock here and just talk a little bit about how this commitment came to be and what really ended up happening. So right now, here's kind of the timeline as far as what happened with Tyler Turner. So he's a former Baylor commit. I think that's a pretty big piece of information that we're going to get into a little bit later as we're talking about this. But so here's what happened. So he backed off of his Baylor commitment, and then Oregon got in the picture just about a month and a half ago. They offered on May 6th, and he wasted no time getting out to Eugene. You got to think that relationship with Matt Powledge, who was at Baylor before becoming the co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach for Dan Lanning's staff, they must have had a strong relationship when Turner was committed to the Bears and Dave Aranda. So he got out to Eugene real quick for an unofficial visit, and that definitely showed him kind of what Oregon has going on right now and what Dan Lanning's building. So really cultivated that interest. And then shortly after that visit, he said, hey, I know I'm still kind of getting some offers and still talking to schools, but I'm going to go ahead and narrow it down to two. That's where it came down to Oklahoma and Oregon. And then after that, he decided to take both of his official visits to those two schools in the month of June. So with that in place, he really was able to kind of see what he needed from both schools. Oklahoma's doing pretty well on the recruiting trail too. They've kind of just developed themselves into a recruiting power, I feel like, especially under Lincoln Riley. And it looks like Brent Venables is going to be able to continue going at a pretty heavy pace. And you figure that he'll have some more success on defense with him being a defensive guy like Dan Lanning. But he took official visits to both schools, and then fresh off that official visit this past weekend, he decided that Oregon was the school for him. So now I'm going to kind of talk about what this recruiting win means for Oregon, Dan Lanning, and the Ducks moving forward. I think the first one that really stands out to me is that Oregon gets back in Texas once again. That's really been a theme from the moment that this new staff came in, right? We saw how Oregon had such a strong presence in the state of Texas under Mario Cristobal and the previous staff, but a lot of presence practically evaporated once this coaching transition took place. Ducks losing commitments from all of their Texas guys in 2022, but they were able to get back into Texas with Kamari Terrell, the defensive back out of Shoemaker High School in Killeen, major speed guy in that 2022 class. So he, along with the rest of the 2022 class that did not enroll early, just got to Eugene, I believe it was last week or earlier this week. So Oregon's full 2022 class looks like they're here. Caleb Chapman got there as well. Sir Mel's got there. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on guys arriving in Eugene and enrolling in summer classes. couple other guys I already talked about. Caleb Chapman, who's originally from the state of Texas, transfers to Oregon from Texas A&M. You also have Ashton Cozart, the 2023 wide receiver, who was the most recent commit before Turner, I believe. He's originally a Pacific Northwest guy, but he played his junior, and then now he's going to play his senior season at Marcus High School in Flower Mound, Texas, rather. So Oregon's still building this Texas connection, which I think is really important, just because you know that that's one of the three most talented states in the country when it comes to producing college football talent. You got California out west, and then Texas, and then Florida's right there as well. There's a lot of other states that are definitely in the conversation as really good producers of talent. If we're looking out west right now, I think Washington's really on the up and up, as well as Arizona, Utah. Those are schools that Oregon kind of has their hands in as well, as we've seen with some of the previous guys that they've been able to get in the fold here. So I think it always helps to get back into Texas. And kind of my other point that just I want to attach to that is that Matt Powledge gets another big recruit. I think he's really kind of cementing himself as someone who has done a really good job on the recruiting trail since coming over to Oregon. I don't think he really had a history as like an elite level recruiter when he was at Baylor, which, mind you, is a pretty good brand, pretty good school. Has obviously had a decorated history with Heisman winner Robert Griffin. And then Dave Aranda, I think he really, really impressed a lot of people in that first season last year, winning the Big 12, holding off Oklahoma and some other folks. So I think much like we saw with Junior Adams, maybe we'll see with Matt Powledge, just how much he's going to be able to elevate himself recruiting for a school like Oregon, for a brand like Oregon, with Nike backing him, with Oregon's history backing him, and the facilities and just everything that is kind of behind Oregon right now when it comes to how they're just getting this momentum on the recruiting trail, laying out the pitch for these guys, and to get these 2023 recruits in the fold, and hopefully fill out the rest of this 23 class sooner than later, so you can get going on 24, because that's what we're seeing a lot of these top programs are doing. I mean, look at Ohio State. They've gotten 3 receivers this week. Carnell Tate among them, Brandon Innis from both of those guys from Florida. So it really pays to try to get these guys in the fold early so you can move on to the next class and not waste any time. So I just kind of wanted to talk. Those are some of my preliminary thoughts, but I'm going to take a quick ad break. And then on the other side of it, I'll continue breaking down Tyler Turner's commitment and what it means for Oregon. Stick around. Welcome back to the Ducks Dish podcast. We're breaking down the latest commitment and recruiting win for Dan Lanning and the Ducks on the recruiting trail. That is, of course, Tyler Turner out of Brennan High School in San Antonio, Texas. He is the second safety to join the fold for Oregon in the 2023 recruiting class, joining Cody DeCambra out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, Nevada. Third overall defensive back, with Cole Martin also being in the fold, the first recruit to pledge to Dan Lanning and the Ducks in 2023. Side note, Cole Martin is going to be taking an unofficial visit to Louisville today, actually. That was the original report from Blair Angulo over at 24/7 Sports. So Louisville has really made a lot of noise on the recruiting trail lately. I wrote about that in one of the stories on Ducks Digest today. Louisville getting DeAndre Moore Jr., Ruben Owens, the 5-star Texas running back. They have Pierce Clarkson. And they also have recently hosted Raymond Polito, another St. John Bosco Brave, big-time offensive lineman who's really skyrocketing on the recruiting trail. So keep an eye on Louisville as they kind of lay out their best pitch to recruits across the country. But I feel like if you're Oregon, you still probably feel pretty good about where things are at with Cole Martin, seeing that his dad, Demetrius Martin's the coach. I haven't talked to anybody at Oregon on this one specifically, or Cole Martin, but kind of just giving my 2 cents there. But big picture, Oregon's class moves from number 37 in the country to number 24 in the country in the 247 composite rankings. They pass Arizona and Jed Fish for the number 3 class in the Pac-12, and now trail only Colorado and USC. Colorado's still sticking around there, which is pretty amazing, but I don't think that I'm in the minority when I say I don't believe that's going to last for too much longer. So I'm going to just kind of talk a little bit more about what's next for Oregon on the recruiting trail, as well as kind of how I think Tyler Turner's commitment impacts the depth chart moving forward. So let's start with the depth chart. Oregon's safety picture is looking pretty good right now, just in terms of experienced guys that they have on the roster, and they're not projected to lose too many pieces after the 2022 season going into 2023. I think the biggest guy that you obviously have to keep your eye on and trying to find someone to replace him is Bennett Williams. Dude is an absolute stud, playmaker, hard hitter, high football IQ, in the right place at the right time. And man, the Ducks definitely missed him last year when their defense kind of leveled off a little bit, and when they weren't really, I feel like you can kind of pinpoint them slowing down in terms of their turnover production with Bennett Williams' freak injury. That, of course, happened right before the Stanford game. So Bennett Williams is going to hurt. That's a guy that you want to have on your roster as long as you possibly can. But he is, it looks like he is probably going to be playing his last season of college football with the Ducks in 2022. So that's the first guy I wanted to talk about. In 2022, you got Trajan Williams as a safety in that recruiting class. And then I also mentioned Kamari Terrell. I think we're still waiting to see if he's going to play cornerback or safety. But as far as guys that have played some football for the Ducks, Triquez Bridges has kind of looks like he's transitioning back to a larger role at safety. That was his native position coming out of high school, but he spent some time last year at cornerback, splitting reps with Jamal Hill. You also have, with Dante Manning at cornerback, You have Jamal Hill back, who is definitely a playmaker for Oregon, and I think that he's someone that enters the 2022 season with a bit of a chip on her shoulder, with something to prove. I think he really wants to get back to that production that we saw late in the 2019 season, specifically against USC with his, I believe it was 2 interceptions that he had, which was an awesome performance. Then you also have guys like Brian Addison, who was one of the top athletes in the country in the 2018 recruiting class. He looks like he's probably going to be playing some safety for the Ducks and Matt Powledge this upcoming season, but he could technically come back in 2023 if he so chooses. He had a redshirt in 2018, and then the 2020 year didn't count towards eligibility, so that's just 19, 21, and 22 that he will have played. So Addison could come back, and then you recently just got Damon David back, a 2022 or 2021 Oregon signee who had originally entered the transfer portal this offseason. And then also Steve Stevens. He's another veteran guy that you could have back in this safety room. So as far as Tyler Turner's position and projection for the depth chart, I don't think that his body of work necessarily projects him to be an instant impact guy, someone who's going to see the field right away for Oregon. But that's not a bad thing. I think that kind of speaks to Oregon's depth at the safety spot, how much experience that they have, how many snaps they have that could return next year. But like I said, Bennett Williams' departure could shake things up and make things interesting here with that recruitment. So let's talk about what's next. Not with this recruitment, but what's going to happen in that safety room after the 2022 season. So just to wrap things up here, guys, it's a little bit of a quick episode, but what's next for Oregon on the recruiting trail? You have 2 safeties in the fold already, so I think it's probably safe to say that you're done at safety, especially after some of those guys that I talked about that are at least projected or could come back to Oregon in 2023. You already have Cole Martin at corner, so you probably want to add maybe another 2 corners, I would think. Caleb Presley is going to be announcing his top 6 on Friday. He's fresh off an unofficial visit to Oregon yet again over this past weekend. We do have an update on that visit over on Ducks Digest, so make sure you guys head on over there and check that visit out from our Joe Zockert. And subscribe to Ducks Digest for the latest recruiting interviews and updates over there as we track the Ducks on the recruiting trail. Another name to keep an eye out on is Colin Gill. He is a 3-star cornerback out of the Washington, D.C. area, St. John's. He looks like he's been feeling the Ducks lately, and it looks like we've seen some reports and kind of read the tea leaves that Oregon's picking up some steam for him on the recruiting trail. So he's a bit of a newer name to watch on the recruiting trail for Oregon, but keep an eye on Colin Gill. He's going to be announcing his college commitment on Thursday. So he could be someone that we see jumping in the fold for Oregon in this 2023 class to give them another corner. And then another guy that I think people have to know about and keep an eye on is Roderick Pleasant, the Southern California cornerback out of Sarah Gardena. So that's where Brian Addison went to school. So something to keep an eye on there. And then just last note I wanted to add here, guys, is that there's some rumblings that Dante Moore will take an unofficial visit to Oregon this weekend which is just huge. You have big names coming to campus for officials like Jaden Wayne, Mateo Uyunglele, Richard Young, Terrence Green. So to get Dante Moore back on campus, if that ends up happening, is going to be absolutely huge. This is showing this comment and question on the screen. It doesn't look like it's an official visit, just from the report that we saw from On3's Chad Simmons. It looks like it could be an unofficial visit, and it was like, quote, likely that he could make his way back out to Eugene. So if Oregon does in fact get Dante Moore on campus this week, what I would probably be doing is just doing everything in my power to try to get that one wrapped up. You want to get a quarterback in the fold now, because it could really just have an awesome domino effect for the Ducks. They did just have Avery Johnson on campus last weekend. I know they really like him, but I think I've said before that if you can choose between an Avery Johnson and a Dante Moore, maybe you end up going with a Dante Moore, who did really well at the overtime OT 7-on-7 event in Las Vegas last week. So wasn't able to get to everybody's questions or comments, but wanted to just hop on here and talk about the latest recruiting win for the Ducks. Tyler Turner will be an Oregon Duck. He's the latest commitment for Dan Lanning and company in the 2023 class. If you guys want to find more of me, you can follow me on Twitter at mtorresports. That name right there, of course, on your screen. Big favor to ask of you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button. It does it's a tremendous help for me and what I'm doing covering the Oregon Ducks. And then if you want to find more written content, you can head on over to ducksdigest.com, and also like and follow us on Facebook and join the discussion on Ducks Digest forums. We're just trying to build that community. But that'll do it for us on this edition of the Ducks Dish podcast. Appreciate everyone stopping by, spending some time out of your day with us talking Ducks. We will see you guys in the next episode. Everybody have an awesome day and take care.